All right, today we're diving into a really huge question about cause and effect. We're going to break down something called the anatomy of a ripple. This idea that every single action, no matter how big or small, might just create an echo that lasts forever.
So let's just start with that. Really think about it for a second. What if everything you did, every choice, every word, even every thought, didn't just happen and then, poof, it's gone? What if it sent out a pulse that just kept going and going and going forever? It's a pretty mind-bending idea, and it's exactly what we're digging into today.
Okay, so to really wrap our heads around this, we've got to start with the basics. Let's break down the fundamental structure of what our source material calls a ripple.
So here it is, the core definition. A ripple is basically a pulse of energy that gets created when something's state of rest is, well, disturbed. That disturbance generates a force, which then flows into a field, and from there, it just echoes, pretty much for all time. The perfect picture for this is just a single stone dropped into a perfectly still pond.
And this breaks down really cleanly into 4 parts. First, you've got the disturbance. That's the stone hitting the water. That creates the force, the actual pulse of energy from the impact. That energy then flows out into the field, which is the water itself. And finally, you get the echo. Those rins that just keep spreading out, repeating that first pulse over and over again.
Now, here's where it gets kind of weird. A little counterintuitive, actually. As those rings spread out, the force of each one gets weaker, right? That makes sense. But here's the thing. As that force gets weaker, the range of the ripple gets bigger. It covers more and more ground, even as its initial power seems to fade away. So you might be thinking, okay, a stone in a pond, I get it. But how far does this idea really go? Well, according to our source, this isn't just about ponds and stones. This whole concept scales all the way up. It suggests that maybe the entire universe operates on a kind of source code.
And this quote, wow, it gets right to the absolute heart of it. It sounds a lot like the Big Bang Theory, doesn't it? This idea that unbelievable, mind-boggling complexity can just erupt from one single tiny point of origin, a single disturbance that creates a ripple that expands into, well, everything we see.
And it's wild, because once you start looking for this source code pattern, you start seeing it everywhere. For living things, you've got DNA. In ancient religions, you have holy texts or the Word. For science, it's those proven theorems that everything is built on. In technology, it's literal programming language. And for the entire cosmos, it's the laws of physics. They're all these foundational instruction sets that end up creating incredible complexity.
So let that sink in for a second. The implication here is, honestly, it's staggering. If these foundational codes are what shape reality, then what about our own internal codes? Our thoughts, our ideas, our beliefs. The theory suggests they're also disturbances. They're creating ripples that literally help manifest the world around us. In a very real way, the world we experience is a mirror of our collective inner state.
And if we follow that logic, these forces aren't just some abstract concepts floating around. They create actual, tangible environments, these fields, that then turn around and exert their own influence, shaping the very beings that live inside them.
Just think about it. A specific terrain, like a desert, a mountain range, an ocean, is a field full of unique forces. And those forces directly influence everything about the creatures living there. Their physical traits, how they move, how they survive, how sensitive they are, even how long they live.
And to really nail this down, the source gives us a perfect case study, a fish living in the ocean. In this example, the ocean is the field, and it's constantly exerting forces, especially pressure and resistance.
So, how does the fish deal with this constant force from its environment? Well, the most obvious answer is its main adaptation, that perfectly sleek, streamlined body.
And that shape is no accident, not at all. It's a direct physical answer to a huge problem. It's designed for one critical purpose, to minimize that constant resistance and navigate the immense pressure of the water. Without that body shape, the fish just couldn't survive in its field. Simple as that.
And it doesn't stop there. You look at its fins, they help it navigate and feel the currents. Its gills are perfectly designed to pull oxygen right out of the water. Every single part of that creature is an answer to a question its environment is asking.
Okay, so if a physical field like the ocean can literally sculpt a living being, what happens when we take that same logic and apply it back to the metaphysical? This is where this whole ripple concept gets really, really interesting, especially when we start talking about our thoughts and our words.
And this is the big leap, the crucial connection. If a fish moving through water creates a physical ripple,
then the same logic says that every thought we have, every action we take, creates a metaphysical one. And the source argues these forces, no matter how tiny, are eternal. They don't just fade away, they just echo.
Which brings us to this absolutely fascinating concept about names that you see in a lot of old traditions. There was this huge difference between, say, a deity's title, which was just a safe way to refer to them, and their true name, which was believed to hold immense power. Why? Because the true name wasn't just a label, it was a direct connection to that being's core source code.
So you see, invoking that true name, that wasn't just speaking. It was like dropping a boulder into the pond. It was believed to create a ripple so massive it could actually cause huge, drastic changes in the real world. This wasn't just about respect. It was about handling a force of nature with some serious caution.
And that right there, that logic explains exactly why you see so many myths where gods and other powerful beings were so protective of their true names. They'd use titles and nicknames to interact with the world safely without, unleashing the full force of their being every time someone said their name.
And that brings this whole massive cosmic idea right back down to you and me. If a single name can hold that kind of power, then what about our own words, our own actions, our own thoughts? Every single one is a disturbance. Every one of them generates a ripple that sends an echo out into the field of the world.
So it all comes down to this one final, really powerful question for you to think about. If this whole theory holds any water, and if everything we do echoes eternally, expanding its reach forever, then you've got to ask yourself, what echoes are you sending out into the world?